The year was 2779. Earth was no longer the home people remembered. The oceans boiled with fire. Cities had turned into graves. Skies were painted red, not with sunsets, but with the flames of war. Humanity had fought for decades, against invasion, against betrayal, against an empire so vast it ruled entire galaxies with an iron hand. Every other world that faced the empire had fallen. Some surrendered, some begged for mercy. None had survived. But Earth. Earth was different. From the ruins of New York to the ashes of Shanghai, from the broken towers of Moscow to the silent deserts of Cairo, humanity refused to bow. They bled, they burned, but they did not break. And then came the broadcast. It began as a single signal, transmission leaving a dying world, piercing through the void, cutting across stars. It carried no music, no plea, no tears. It carried only a voice that was steady, a voice that was cold, a voice that carried the fire of 1 billion souls. This is humanity's last warning. Those words struck the galaxy like thunder, alien. Leaders froze in their palaces. Merchant fleets stopped in the middle of hyperspace. Soldiers across star systems paused and listened. No one expected Earth to speak again. No one expected Earth to resist. And yet here it was, a final message. The broadcast did not beg. The broadcast did not cry. The broadcast did not kneel. We will not kneel. The voice repeated, stronger now, filled with iron. We will not break. Every world that heard it felt a shiver. These were not the words of the weak. These were not the words of a defeated people. These were the words of a predator. Wounded, but still alive. And then came the last line. If you come, you will burn. The galaxy trembled, because the words were not just a threat. They were a promise. The Empire had crushed hundreds of civilizations. Worlds far larger than Earth. Armies far stronger. Species far older. And yet none had spoken like this. None had dared. The aliens had seen Earth's cities fall. They had seen its fleets torn apart. They had seen its armies shattered. By all reason, Earth should have been silent. But Earth was not silent. In the middle of death, it still had a voice. And that voice was fire in the smoke-filled chambers. Of alien councils, fear spread. Some whispered, humanity is lost. Others whispered, humanity is changed. They remembered the stories of the Terran Marines. Soldiers who fought from the ruins. Warriors who kept coming, even when everything was lost. Men and women who carried rifles in broken hands, who rose from smoke and flame, who turned every battlefield into a nightmare. The broadcast was not just words, it was a warning. It meant the Terran Marines were still alive. It meant Earth was not finished. And so the galaxy listened. Some planets laughed at the madness of Earth. Some pitied the stubborn humans. But deep inside, every listener felt the same shiver, because the voice did not sound like a dying species. It sounded like a storm. The broadcast played again and again, across battlefields, across stations, across alien homes. This is humanity's last warning. We will not kneel. We will not break. If you come, you will burn. Simple words, yet heavier than war itself. The Empire's admirals clenched their fists. The alien slaves of the Empire whispered in secret. The free worlds of the galaxy dared to hope, and all of them knew one truth: humanity was not done. The voice carried something greater than weapons, greater than armies, greater than fleets. It carried defiance. It carried rage. It carried the will of a people who refused to die quietly. Every second of that broadcast was a spark. Every word was fire, and across the galaxy, sparks became flames. For the first time in centuries, the Empire felt something it had long forgotten. Fear not, because Earth had strength. Not because Earth had numbers, but because Earth had something far more dangerous. Unbroken will, and so the galaxy trembled. Not from the roar of the Empire, not from the cries of the conquered, but from a single human voice. A voice that promised fire. And the stars themselves seemed to whisper the same truth. Humanity will not kneel. Humanity will not break. Humanity will burn the galaxy before it surrenders. The broadcast did not end with silence. It echoed. It spread. It burned its way. Through the galaxy, on distant worlds, people who had never seen Earth felt the chill of those words. On hidden moons and crowded stations, whispers rose. And far away, in the halls of alien rulers, fear began to grow. The Empire was powerful, yes. But now, something else lived in the shadows of the stars, the promise of humanity's fire. For centuries, the galaxy had lived under the weight of the Galactic Empire. Planets surrendered. Civilizations bent their knees. Whole species disappeared into slavery. No one resisted for long. No one dared. But Earth. Earth was different. Broadcast showed it. The voice of a dying world had done what no army could, planted doubt. Among the alien races, this doubt grew into desperation. On the world of Avalor, once proud and free, the alien council gathered. Their cities were scarred by war. There, fleets were shattered. The Empire's shadow loomed above them. The council leader, his scales burned and scarred, spoke with shaking words. The humans, they still fight. Even as their world burns, they send this warning. If they do not surrender, why should we? Perhaps we are not yet lost. Another alien, her voice filled with sorrow, whispered, if the humans burn, the galaxy burns with them. Perhaps that is the only hope we have left. And so, the message spread further. Across the stars, the weak and the broken began to hope. For the first time in generations, they saw not just fear, but resistance. But they also knew one truth alone they could not stand. That is why one by one alien fleets turned there. Signals toward Earth. Not to mock it, not to threaten it, but to beg. It was a strange sight. Races that had once laughed at humanity now bowed their heads. Species that had seen Earth as a backwater world now placed their hopes on it. Some sent desperate words. Some sent silent signals. Some sent nothing but coordinates written in blood. Earth, help us. Earth, do not let us fall. Earth, stand with us. It was not mercy they asked for. It was vengeance. On the ruined spaceport of Xeron, a slave species tore down the banners of the Empire and painted one word on the walls. Earth, in the refugee camps of the Tariq. Mothers told their children stories of Terran Marines monsters. In the smoke, demons who refused to die, warriors who rose from fire. Those children whispered back, the humans will come. The humans will save us. But not all aliens trusted this fire. Some feared it more than the Empire itself. On the council. Ship of the Vorok, their warlord growled, do you not see? Humanity is not a savior. Humanity is a weapon. If they rise, the galaxy will burn with them. Another replied quietly, then let it burn. Better fire than chains. And so the pleas continued. 1,000 voices, 1,000 messages, some begging, some demanding, some praying. All turned to Earth. Meanwhile, the Empire itself listened. Its admirals mocked the broadcast. Its governors laughed at the aliens begging for help. But deep inside their halls, unease spread. The Empire had crushed rebellions before. It had silenced voices before, but this time was different. This time, the galaxy itself was calling Earth. And then came the strangest thing of all. Alien fleets, broken. Shattered fleets began to move. Not toward the Empire, not toward their homeworlds, toward Earth. They brought ships full of refugees, brought weapons stolen from the Empire, brought desperate soldiers who had nothing left to lose. They came not to conquer, but to kneel. For the first time in history, the galaxy knelt not to the Empire, but to Earth. In the bunkers beneath ruined continents, Earth received the signals. The generals listened. The leaders read. The soldiers heard the cries, and in the smoke-filled air of a dying planet. They all knew the truth. The galaxy was begging. But Earth would not answer with peace. Earth had only one answer left. The aliens did not know it yet. But when they called for help, They were not calling for politicians. They were not calling for treaties. They were calling for the Terran Marines. And when those Marines came, they would not come with words. They would come with fire. The pleas of the galaxy had been sent. The galaxy had made its choice. Now it was Earth's turn to answer, and Earth would answer not with mercy, not with pity, but with war. The pleas had reached Earth. Thousands of alien signals crossed the void, each carrying the same desperate message. Help us. Stand with us. Do not let us fall. They begged, they cried, but Earth was silent. For weeks, the signals echoed into the ruins of a burning world. In the shattered bunkers of North America, in the deep shelters beneath Europe, in the last strongholds hidden under Asia's mountains, humanity listened. The people of Earth heard the pleas, but they did not answer immediately. Because Earth did not rush to mercy. Earth was preparing something else. From orbit, the planet looked broken. Whole continents were scarred. Cities were nothing but ash. The oceans carried wrecks of fleets that had fallen. And yet deep inside the ruins, life remained. Factories still worked. Soldiers still marched. Engines still roared. Humanity had not died. Humanity was arming itself. In the massive hangars of the old Terran Union, shadows moved. War machines slept beneath steel. Battleships, long thought destroyed, rose from the dust. Their hulls bore scars, but their engines lit with fury. The alien pleas had not been ignored. They had been heard. And Earth had chosen its answer. But the answer was not peace, not comfort, not forgiveness. The answer was war. The Terran Marines were the first to move. They gathered in the ruins, their armor blackened by smoke, their helmets scarred by battles that should have killed them. They were soldiers who had lost homes, families, everything. But they still had their oath. They did not fight for survival anymore. They fought for vengeance. When the alien messages came, the Marines listened, and without words, they marched to the transports. Steel boots hit steel floors. The sound echoed like thunder in the dark hangars. One Marine, scarred across the face, whispered only this: "If they ask for fire, then we will give them fire." The fleet began to rise. From craters, from oceans, from hidden fortresses, Earth's warships lifted into the skies. Some were old and battered. Some were new and sharp. But every ship burned with the same fury. Alien eyes watching from orbit saw the impossible Earth, broken and bleeding, sending its fleet back into the stars. And on every ship and every corridor, Marines prepared. They cleaned rifles. They sharpened blades. They painted armor with the names of their fallen. This was not an army of mercy. This was an army of vengeance. The galaxy had begged. The galaxy had prayed, not would see the truth. Earth did not send diplomats. Earth did not send promises. Earth sent Marines. When the first broadcast was sent, the galaxy trembled. Now came the second broadcast, Earth's answer. It was short, cold, terrifying. "We have heard your cries. We will come. But understand this: where the Terran Marines go, only fire will follow." The message ended. No more words, no explanations, no mercy. The galaxy understood, as the answer had been given. Across the stars, alien leaders gasped. Some cheered in hope. Some feared what was coming. But all knew one thing: humanity had chosen war. The refugees who had begged for help now whispered prayers of thanks. The enslaved species under the Empire dared to dream of freedom. The Empire itself felt the weight of danger, because they knew what Terran Marines were. They were not soldiers. They were storms. And storms did not come to save. Storms came to destroy. Inside Earth's command bunker, the generals gave their final orders. Launch the fleets, deploy the Marines. Answer them with fire. And the Earth roared back into the galaxy. On the edge of the solar system, alien scouts saw the fleet leave orbit. Hundreds of ships, thousands of soldiers, weapons glowing with power, but more frightening than the machines were the faces of the Marines. Silent, hard, unbroken, they did not march for survival. They did not march for glory. They marched for vengeance. And vengeance has no mercy. The galaxy had begged. Earth had answered, and its answer was written in one word. The galaxy had begged. Earth had answered, and now the Terran Marines were rising. They were not many, not compared to the endless armies of the Empire, not compared to the billions of alien troops spread across the stars, but numbers never defined the Terran Marines. They were defined by something else: discipline, rage, and a will that could not be broken. From the ashes of Earth, they gathered, men and women who had lost everything, soldiers who had seen their cities burn, warriors who had buried their families in the ruins of war, yet none of them laid down their weapons. None of them surrendered. Instead, they sharpened their blades, polished their rifles, strapped on their scarred armor, and when the order came, they stood in silence. Thousands of them, eyes like steel, hearts like fire. They were ready. The alien pleas had not called for diplomats. They had not called for peacekeepers. They had called for something far darker, and the Marines were happy to answer. In the hangars of Earth's great battleships, shadows moved like living storms. Rows of armored figures marched as one. Their boots struck the floor in unison, each step echoing like thunder. Inside their helmets there was no fear. There was only focus. Every Marine carried scars. Some on their bodies, some on their souls. But none of those scars weakened them. They had become iron. One commander stood before his men. His armor was cracked, his voice deep and steady. The galaxy begged for help. We are not here to help. We are here to remind them who we are. We are Terran Marines, and we do not forgive. Do not forget. We bring fire. The soldiers did not cheer. They did not clap. They simply lowered their visors and prepared to march, because Marines did not need speeches. They needed war. The preparations spread across Earth's last strongholds. In underground armories, ammunition was loaded. Crates of explosives were stacked. Plasma rifles hummed with energy. Rail cannons were mounted on ships. Engineers worked day and night, fixing what was broken, reforging what was lost. The ships that rose into the sky were not perfect. They carried scars. But those scars were proof of survival, and in every shadow of those war machines, Marines stood ready. When the first fleet launched, the stars themselves seemed to shiver. The battleships carried thousands of Marines across their decks. Some stared at the void through steel windows. Others prayed in silence, but most simply sharpened knives and loaded magazines because they knew the truth. The galaxy had called them saviors. But the Marines knew what they really were. They were executioners on alien worlds. The news spread fast. The Terran Marines are coming. They have risen, Earth has answered. Some alien slaves whispered those words with hope. Alien rulers whispered them with fear. And the Empire's commanders whispered them with rage, because they knew. When Marines rose, empires fell. The first training drills began aboard the fleet, in narrow corridors. Squads moved like shadows, rifles raised, armor clashing. In combat chambers, they tore through simulations of Empire soldiers, their tactics precise and merciless. In silence, they memorized every weakness, every flaw. Every opening their enemy left behind, they did not train to survive. They trained to kill, and then in the command deck of Earth's flagship, the orders were given. The general spoke only one line. The galaxy called us. We rise now. We make the Empire bleed. The fleet cheered not with shouts, but with engines. Battleships ignited their thrusters. The void shook with the roar of war machines. The Marines strapped themselves into drop pods, their armor glowing under red lights. Their mission was not to defend. It was to strike. It was to show the galaxy that Earth did not crawl from fire just to kneel again as the ships cut through. The void, a single symbol, appeared on every Marine's visor, at burning Earth, a reminder of what had been lost, a promise of what was to come. And in that silence, every Marine whispered the same oath. We do not kneel. We do not break. We rise. Galaxy had sent out a plea. Now it would see the answer. The Terran Marines had risen, and they were bringing fire. The Galaxy had waited. The pleas had been sent. The Marines had risen. And now, the first clash had come. On the edge of the Dravo system, the Empire's fleet arrived. Hundreds of warships stretched across the black void, their hulls glowing. Red with power, their engines burned like suns. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy. For centuries, these fleets had crushed all resistance. Every world they visited had fallen. Every voice that rose against them had been silenced. And now, they expected the same. They expected Earth to break. They expected the Terran Marines to vanish into smoke. But what they saw was something else. From the shadows of the system, Earth's fleet emerged. Not as large, not as many, but every ship looked like a scarred beast. Steel gray hulls patched, with armor covered in marks of old battles. Their engines roared with fury. Their weapons glowed with fire at the front of the fleet. The flagship Iron Dawn cut through the void. Behind it, the battleships spread like a wall of iron. The Empire laughed at the sight. The admirals called it foolish. How could a broken Earth stand against them? But then, the Terran Marines deployed. The first wave of drop pods launched from Earth's ships. Thousands of metal coffins, each carrying a Marine inside, shot into the void like meteors. Their thrusters screamed, cutting across the darkness, heading straight toward the Empire's ships. The admirals panicked. They are charging us. They dare attack us? Yes, they dared. The first shots fired. The Empire's plasma cannons lit the sky. Tearing through space, turning black into red, explosions shook the void as Terran ships took fire. But Earth did not stop. Railguns fired back. Massive slugs of steel, moving faster than light, ripped into the Empire's front lines. Alien warships, once thought indestructible, cracked open like glass. 1, 2, 3 ships exploded in seconds. The Empire's laughter turned into silence. The Terran fleet pressed forward. Then came the Marines. The drop pods smashed into enemy cruisers, tearing through armor like knives through flesh. Explosions followed, and from the smoke, the Terran Marines walked black armor, red visors, Kea rifles glowing with fury. They moved like shadows, silent, relentless. The Empire's soldiers fired, screamed, and fell. One Marine squad tore through an entire deck in minutes. Blades cut. Grenades thundered. Plasma rifles spat fire. The Empire's soldiers had numbers. But the Marines had something else. They did not fear death. On the bridge of the Iron Dawn, the Terran general watched the chaos unfold. His voice was steady, cold, filled with iron. Push forward. Break them. Let the galaxy see what it means to stand against Earth. The order was obeyed. The clash grew brutal. Empire ships exploded, one by one. Fire lit the void. Alien screams filled the coms. Everywhere the Marines landed, fear spread. They fought with precision. They fought with fury. They fought as if every bullet was vengeance for Earth. One Marine, surrounded by alien soldiers, laughed as he reloaded. His armor was cracked, his body bleeding, but his voice carried like thunder. You think this is enough? We are humanity. Don't die. We rise. And then he charged, dragging the enemy into fire with him. The Empire realized too late. These were not just soldiers. These were demons forged in fire. Every Marine was a storm. Every squad was a nightmare. The first clash was no battle. It was a slaughter. When the smoke cleared, dozens of Empire ships had fallen. Hundreds of their soldiers were dead. And standing in the ruins, covered in ash and blood, were the Terran Marines. They did not cheer. They did not rest. They only marched forward, because this was just the beginning. The galaxy watched in shock. News spread faster than light. Terran Marines have struck the Empire. The Empire's fleets are burning. Earth has returned. For the first time in history, the Empire bled, and the galaxy understood. This was not a war of survival. This was a war of vengeance. On the edge of the Dravo system, the first clash ended. The Empire retreated. The Marines stood, and from the smoke of battle, one truth echoed across the stars. The first clash had shattered the Empire's pride, but the real terror was only beginning, because space battles were one thing, ground battles were another. And on the ground, the Terran Marines were nightmares. The planet Korath was the Empire's fortress world. Black towers rose above the clouds. Cannons as tall as mountains watched the skies. Armies of alien soldiers filled the valleys, waiting for the invaders. The Empire thought no one could take it. No one would dare. But the Terran Marines dared. The drop pods fell like fire from the heavens, thousands of them, each one burning through the atmosphere, leaving scars across the sky. The people below looked up and whispered in terror, "The humans are coming." The pods struck the ground with thunder. Explosions shook the soil. Smoke covered the valleys. And then they rose. From the fire and the smoke, the Terran Marines emerged. Armored shadows, red visors glowing in the dark. Rifles raised, blades shining. They did not march like soldiers. They moved like predators. The Empire's troops opened fire, plasma bolts ripping through the air. The ground shook with artillery. The sky burned with explosions. But the Marines did not fall. They walked through the fire. They walked through the smoke, and they killed. The first squad cut into the enemy lines like knives. Rifles spat fire. Grenades tore trenches apart. Blades carved through armor. The aliens screamed. They had fought before. They had seen war. But they had never seen this, because the Marines did not stop. Even when wounded, they kept moving. Even when bleeding, they kept fighting. One Marine, his arm shattered, strapped his rifle to his armor and kept firing with his other hand. Another burned and broken, charged with a blade, dragging 3 enemies down with him. The Empire called them demons, and in the smoke, they looked like demons. Everywhere the Marines landed, fire followed, cities burned. Fortresses fell. The Empire's mighty towers cracked and crashed into the ground. The alien civilians watched in silence. Some hid. Some prayed. But some, the enslaved, whispered with hope, "The humans fight for us." But the Marines did not fight for anyone. They fought for Earth. They fought for vengeance. And vengeance burned hotter than mercy. The battle stretched. For hours, the Empire's commanders threw wave after wave of soldiers into the fight. They sent armored beasts. They sent machines. They sent everything. And still, the Marines did not break. They fought in the ruins. They fought in the smoke. They fought in the fire. Every street became a battlefield. Every shadow became a trap. The Empire's soldiers began to whisper among themselves. You can kill them, but they keep coming. They rise from the smoke. They don't die. Fear spread faster than fire. In the heart of Korath's capital, the Empire's flag burned. A squad of Marines raised Earth's banner on the ruins of a black tower. It was not victory. It was a message written in smoke and fire. Humanity has come. From orbit, Earth's fleet watched the ground battles unfold. Reports came in Marines holding against impossible odds, Marines breaking enemy lines. Marines pushing forward even when surrounded, and the generals knew the truth. The Marines were more than soldiers. They were symbols of defiance, symbols of vengeance. The galaxy had begged Earth for hope, and now hope walked in smoke and fire. When the sun finally set on Korath, the battlefield was silent. The Empire's armies were broken. The towers were ash. And in the ruins, the Terran Marines stood. Their armor was cracked. Their bodies were scarred. But their eyes still burned with fire. Not a single Marine spoke. They simply looked to the next horizon, because for them, there was no rest, only war. Across the galaxy, the images spread. Smoke-filled cities, burning fortresses. Marines walking through fire like shadows of death. And everywhere, the same whispers. Grew. The humans are demons. The humans rise from smoke. The humans do not die. The galaxy had begged for saviors. What it received were nightmares. Nightmares wrapped in armor. nightmares that brought fire, nightmares that carried the will of Earth. And so, in the fire and the smoke, the Terran Marines carved their legend, a legend the galaxy would never forget. The galaxy had watched in silence as Korath burned. The Empire's fortress world had fallen, the unshakable bastion had cracked under the fire of Terran Marines. But for the galaxy, it was more than a battle. It was the first sign that the Empire could bleed. For centuries, the Empire had ruled with fear. World after world had bowed. Entire civilizations had fallen without a fight, too broken to resist. But now, after Earth's broadcast, after the fire, after the smoke, something changed. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy whispered a word it had long forgotten. Hope. The Empire knew the danger. If hope spread, their power would fade. So, they struck back with fury. Massive fleets gathered in the void, armadas larger than anything Earth had ever seen. Thousands of warships moved toward the free systems, each one armed with enough firepower to shatter planets. The message was clear: the Empire would not lose, but the Marines. They had another message. On the shattered world of Korath, survivors rebuilt among the ashes. And in the ruins, the Terran Marines stood guard. Their armor was scarred, their bodies worn, but their eyes burned with defiance. Alien refugees came to them in silence. Some offered thanks, some offered food. Others simply knelt, tears in their eyes, and the Marines said nothing. Because they were not here for glory. They were here for war. In the halls of Earth's Fleet Command, generals studied the enemy's movements. The Empire was bringing everything. Entire sectors were on fire. Now, the galaxy would be lost. So Earth made a choice. They would not fight alone. They would not carry the fire by themselves. Earth called out across the stars, "Stand with us. Fight with us. Together we break the chains." The message spread like lightning to the broken, to the enslaved, to the desperate, and the galaxy answered. First came the Thalrians, an insectoid race once crushed under the Empire's boot. They sent ships small, fragile, but burning with determination. Then came the Vaeri, tall crystal-bodied beings who had never raised a weapon in their history. But now, they forged blades of light, swearing to fight at humanity's side. Even the Drekner, predators feared across systems, bowed their heads to Earth and offered their claws for the war. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy stood united. And at the heart of this alliance stood Earth, not as rulers, not as saviors, but as warriors who refused to kneel. The Empire did not fear fleets. They did not fear numbers. They feared unity. And now that unity had come, the great battle began. At Selner's Rift, a black hole system at the edge of the galaxy, surrounded by shattered moons and broken stars, the Empire brought its full mitros of battleships, dreadnoughts, carriers stretching into the dark. But Earth and its allies stood against them. Terran battleships took the front line. Alien vessels filled the flanks. Small fighter wings darted through the void, carrying the fire of resistance, and behind it all, in dropships and carriers, the Terran Marines waited. The clash was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Lasers lit up the void. Railguns thundered. Missiles streaked like falling stars. Explosions tore apart the silence of space, each one bright enough to blind. For every Allied ship that burned, the Empire ships followed it into the void. The Empire fought with power, but Earth fought with fury, and fury was stronger. The Marines dropped once more, this time onto the moons surrounding the rift. In the dust and broken stone, they fought like shadows. Smoke rose from every crater. The enemy tried to overwhelm them with numbers, but every time the Empire advanced, the Marines cut them down. Alien soldiers, once enslaved, now stood beside the Marines. Together, they pushed back against the storm, and, slowly, impossibly, the Empire began to retreat. It was a sight no one believed they would ever see, the Empire's fleets, mighty and countless, pulling back. Their commanders shouting orders in desperation, their soldiers breaking in fear, because They were not fighting an army. They were fighting an idea. An idea carried by fire and smoke, the idea that humanity had brought into the galaxy. We will not kneel. We will not break. When the last of the Empire's ships vanished into the void, silence filled the rift. The galaxy stared, and then it cheered on hundreds of worlds. Voices rose in defiance. Chains broke, flags burned. The people shouted one name again and again. Earth not as conquerors, not as masters, but as the spark that lit the fire of freedom. The turning point had come. The Empire was still vast, still powerful, still dangerous, but it was no longer unbreakable. And at the heart of it all stood humanity. Scarred, bleeding, but unbroken. The galaxy no longer whispered in fear. Now it roared with hope. For the first time in centuries, the stars belonged not to the Empire, but to the free. The galaxy was never the same after Selner's rift. The Empire, once thought eternal, had been forced to retreat. But victory did not mean peace. The Empire was wounded, but not destroyed. Across the stars, its fleets regrouped. Its governors tightened their grip. Worlds still burned under its banners. The fight was far from over. Yet something had changed. The people had seen the truth. The Empire was not invincible, and that truth spread like wildfire in the shattered ruins of battlefields. Alien children whispered the words of the broadcast that had started it all. This is humanity's last warning. We will not kneel. We will not break. Those words echoed in the dark corners of the galaxy. They became more than a message. They became a promise. The Terran Marines returned to Earth not as victors, not as conquerors, but as legends. When they stepped off their ships, crowds filled the streets of every city. Flags rose, bells rang, voices cried out in joy and grief, because the people knew the truth. Every Marine who returned had carried the fire of 1,000. Fallen brothers, they were not heroes in their own eyes. They were soldiers who had done what had to be done, but to the galaxy. They were more allied worlds rebuilt in the shadow of war. The Thalrians, once slaves, raised their cities from dust. The Viari forged great halls of crystal, filled with light and song. The Drekner swore a blood oath, their warriors promising to fight until the Empire was Ashdot, and at the center of it all stood Earth, not as ruler, not as master, but as the heart. Of the fire, the Empire tried to silence the story. They sent assassins. They spread lies. They burned libraries. They erased records. But no matter how hard they tried, they could not kill what had already been born, because the legend of Earth was not written in books. It was written in blood, in smoke, in the eyes of every being who had seen the Marines fight. The Empire had armies, but humanity had something stronger. A story. Generals across the galaxy began to speak the words in secret. If Earth can stand, so can we. Soldiers painted the Terran emblem on their armor. Children carved it into stone. Refugees sang it in whispers across camps, across void, across stars. The fire spread, and once fire spreads, it cannot be stopped. Years passed. The war raged on. But everywhere the Empire struck, it found resistance waiting. And in the shadows, in the smoke, one could always see them. The Terran Marines, scarred, unbroken, unyielding. The warriors who had stood against an empire. One night, deep in the ruins of a broken world, a young alien child asked a Marine a question. Why do you fight? Why do you keep going when the Empire is so big? The Marine looked at the child. His armor was cracked. His face carried the weight of war. But his voice was calm, because if we stop, the fire dies. And if the fire dies, hope dies with it. The galaxy never forgot those words. Generations later, long after the last Empire ship burned, long after the war was won, the story of Earth still lived. It was told in songs, in whispers, in the stars themselves. The story of a small blue planet that refused to kneel. It's a story of a people who chose defiance over chains, It's a story of warriors who carried fire into the heart of darkness, and so the galaxy remembered that freedom was not given. It was taken, that peace was not found, it was fought for, and that sometimes it takes a spark from a single world to set the stars ablaze. The Empire was gone, the chains were broken. But the legacy of Earth lived on forever, not in monuments, not in statues, but in every being who looked at the sky and remembered the words that had changed everything. This is humanity's last warning. We will not kneel. We will not break. If you come, you will burn. And so the galaxy stood free, carrying not just the scars of war, but the fire of humanity, a fire that would never die.